Welcome back to Between the Levees. I'm joined today by Captain David Webster. I found him in a Facebook group posting pictures, I think near a lock behind a tow, with the tagline, "Where's Webbie?" Captain Webster, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
How long have you been posting those kind of pictures with that "Where's Webbie" tag?
Um, that's been, I think, about 3 years now. I started that. My nickname's always, I've had it since junior high. Webbie. It started long time ago, but as far as river industry photographs, I started, like I said, about 3 years ago. I just figured it make it a little different, where you post something, an actual photograph, and see how many people would know where you were at that moment in time. So it was kind of cool. I got some crazy answers, and then other people, and I still do it. I do daytime, nighttime. It kind of breaks the monotony on the regular. Uh, oh, here's the arch in St. Louis, or here's the stadium that's from Cincinnati, or anywhere else along the river system.
Have you run everywhere?
I have run um, just about every single river. I think I've got about 12,000 miles in my head, stuck in my head, that I've covered over the years. This is my 40th year between decking and driving a boat.
In those 4 decades, have you found yourself on the canals?
I have run, I've ran from Brownsville, Texas to Pensacola, Florida. I've run the Ouachita, the Red, the Chaffalay. Uh, I've run, see, Brownsville over to Pensacola, up through Mobile, the Black Warrior, the Ten Tom, of course, the Tennessee, the Ohio, upper, lower, Illinois. I've been on the Monongahela and the Allegheny, Arkansas. I think that covers them all.
No time on the Missouri?
I actually did the Missouri too. I actually ran all the way up to Blair, Nebraska. Um, Back in 2019, when it was majorly flooded and all the levees were, everything was at its max capacity, I was asked to get on um, they asked me if I would drive up to Omaha, Nebraska. And I said, sure. Well, we ended up, the equipment from Great Lakes Dock and Dredge and hadn't been moved. So I drove all the way up to Omaha, got there about 11 o'clock at night, turned around, got on a flight the next morning at 6 a.m., flew back to Paducah, stopped in at Western Rivers, done some paperwork with them along with the other pilot. We ended up grabbing the Tate Oglesby, light boated to Memphis, picked up the Great Lake Dock and Dredge, Iowa, and we hauled butt back up here to St. Louis. Um, During that major flood, we had to cut the radar stand down in half to fold it over so it would actually fit through the bridges here in St. Louis. When we went through it, it was 40.16 feet. The entire harbor was closed down. We were the only ones moving through there because they needed that equipment because of the, I think it was I-29 up there was shut down because the levee had broken up there. So we had to go through all that, went up through there, drove it. I've actually got a YouTube video of that going through the harbor when it was that high. Then we spent the next 3 days shoving up through all the way up to, I think it was 12 miles above Nebraska City, Nebraska, where the levee was broke and they were going to do the repairs and start filling it to get it back and replaced.
All right. Well, I think you mentioned you're in St. Louis. Who do you work for, and what vessel are you on?
Um, I'm actually on the DARIN ADRIAN right now. I'm actually hanging out right here at the mouth of the Missouri River. I work for Marquette. I took a full-time job 4 years ago next month, full-time with them. I'm actually the high captain of the David L. Fields, but it's in for repairs right now. So I've got my steersman who um, basically shadowing me right now. I've got another 52 days with him. Hoping to get him turned loose and ready to go on his journey, on his career.
Well, let's start where it all began. I know you said you haven't seen any of these episodes, which is a real shame. I hope that that changes here soon. You'll be number 131 here with me. But
Okay.
tell me where you were born, what was growing up for you, what did your parents do for a living, any siblings, kind of how was school, what drove you to the industry?
Well, I started in a small town. I actually in a small town of Verona, Kentucky, which is about 35 minutes south of Cincinnati, Ohio. Um, I grew up there in that Walton, Verona area. Um, I bounced around Northern Kentucky for a while in different houses. You know how it is when you're growing up. When you move, you got to go with the parents. Um, when I My dad had actually been working for Carlisle Construction, who also ended up getting boat equipment. So he ended up having growing up. He had 20 boats um, in the greater Cincinnati area. And my dad was actually, I called him an APP, an all-purpose person. He could run construction equipment as well as he had a license to drive boats. So again, it was all-purpose person. And when he took me out one Saturday on a weekend excursion with my stepmom, we went up through the bridges light boat, and back then it was the Beverly Wayne, still a Beverly Wayne right now. We nicknamed it the houseboat with Tony's. And I sat there, I think I was 12 or 14 years old. I don't remember. I jumped up in the seat. He explained to me how to use the sticks. And after about 15 minutes, I spun the chair around and I looked at my dad and my stepmom. I said, I know what I want to do when I grow up, when I get out of school. He said, what's that? I said, I want to drive a boat. And that's what started it all, basically. Um, I ended up at Moorhead Marine Service, which is right there above Old Lock 37 on the Ohio River. That's where I got my first paycheck back in 1984. Um, Cutting weeds over the weekend. I would go down on the weekend, cut with a sickle. I would cut the weeds or do whatever else and make lines on the dock. In the wintertime, I'd go into the barn, what they called the barn with a heater with the wood burning stove, stoke it up, and that's all I would do is make lines on Saturday and Sunday. Put my little time card in, $4.50 an hour. Um, that's how I paid for my class ring and my prom. So I couldn't complain about that. That's how I got my gas money running back and forth throughout the week on my 1968 Chevy Impala that I ended up getting from a person. I don't remember who I got it from, but then I became a deckhand locally there for a long time. I worked 16 years in the harbor there at Cincinnati, and I started venturing out after the Coast Guard started coming down with new regulations. They they tried to they had discussed about doing horsepower restrictions or localizing how people would stay in a local area, specialize in them, something similar to what they do in the Gulf down there at New Orleans, where the pilots only do so many miles and they get off and they're specialized in that. Well, that's when I actually got my license in '97. I actually turned around and I was like, I don't know, this is good or bad about the horsepower restriction and then localizing, and there was all kinds of things going on. So I left Cincinnati and I went to Pittsburgh for a year. Went up there, was working. Um, Gary Keene, Bill Klein from the River School. I ended up meeting them. Stayed there, like I said, in Memphis. Done all my testing there, and went up to Pittsburgh. Then I came back to Cincinnati for a couple more years until um, my boss Griff passed away in the year 2000, And then I went to, I worked on the Dredge America over here in the St. Louis district with the Corps of Engineers as a third party for a couple years. I ran some of their equipment. Um, First time I'd ever seen a bicycle chain with a needle on it with no flanking rudders. That was fun trying to figure out. And then, of course, there wasn't GPS or anything like that local, so you had to use road maps and pointed arrows to get around. So you had to pay attention to road signs. If not, you'd end up wherever you never know where you're going to end up. And soon after that, um, I ended up at ACBL for about 9 months. Was there. That's when I actually was starting to learn line hauling, long haul. Done that. Then ended up over at XL for a little while. And let's see where else. Went down to, I done tall stacks, two of the tall stacks there in Cincinnati on my days off, helped them there. Ended up doing from ACBL, the XL, and then I found Warrior and Gulf Navigation, which was in the Gulf area there at Chickasaw, outside of Mobile, Alabama. I worked there for a year. I ran the Pascagoula. I ran it for a year, ran the loop, um, where they were on a rock contract for Martin Marietta with the rock quarries. I ran that for a while, for a year, and I ended up leaving. There, like I said, I went to XL, was there. I ran the Winchester, like that little single screw boat. That was a good little boat. I ran a couple of the other boats as well, twin screws, and that wasn't quite getting it. So I ended up, I put my name in at AEP, which was out at Cape Girardeau at the time. I was there 7 years. I was there for 7. We parted ways there. Where'd I go after that? Oh, I just started tripping. I started tripping around for a little while. I tripped for SCF for for about 2 years, and I ended up taking a job with them. I ran east to west down there on the Gulf Coast on the little boat. It was called the SCF Navigator. I don't know what it's called now. They had completely redone it, reskinned it. Everything was brand new. It was a good little boat. It was 2,500 horsepower. Then after I was running that, things changed a little bit. They needed me back on heavy tow at SCF, so I ended up coming back to long haul with the heavier tow, running St. Louis, Missouri to St. Paul on the Jenny K on that. It's 6,200. I ran it back and forth for a little while. Let's see. After that, I started back tripping again. Things changed on that as well. The economy and the just economy took a crap, so I started tripping around again. I ended up going to TBT for a few years. I was on the Roger Knight there for a year, bounced around on some of their equipment. From there, I ended up leaving. See, what did I do? Oh, they had me and Inland. We had discussed wages with Inland. They didn't going to pay the wages, so I changed. I just said, well, we'll just part ways, and I got off the boat. Me and the pilot both got off the boat. We both went home. So the whole crew ended up walking after that. So I tripped around for a little while. Then the flood came. Spent 3 months up there on the Missouri River during the flood, just tripping around. As soon as got done with the Missouri, Marquette called me and asked me to trip. I said, sure. No problem. I ended up bouncing around basically all the 6,000s that Marquette's got, running on the lower or on the upper, Illinois or Ohio, wherever they wanted me to go. I ran it. Didn't bother me. Um, During that time frame, I did a one little hitch there where I brought an ex casino boat out from Davenport, Iowa, which you'll find some of the videos I have on that as well. When it come out of Davenport, Iowa, we ended up taking it down to Memphis, Tennessee. That was that was an adventure there by itself. Um, just like I said, bounced around a little bit here and there. Then I got another phone call, asked me to help start a company up on the Missouri River back in 2020. And I said, sure. Well, I'll take a leap of faith to see if it'll work. And we started out, it lasted for me about 4 months. But there was some politics that got involved that I didn't agree with. And I was like, no, I'm not going to stay in all that. That's not me. I'm not going to do all that. That's not my thing. So I ended up parting ways. And Marquette called me right off the bat, said, why don't you come over here? Well, I got a spot for you right now. And I said, sure, I'll come over and trip, but that's not do anything full time. So I went back to tripping for a little while. And June 1st, which is coming around the corner, is when I took a job full time with Marquette. I finally agreed to a full time job again. And overall, Marquette's a good company. I can't complain. Every company has their quirks, but it is what it is. So, like I said, I ended up getting a high caps position. Um, well, it's officially 3 years. I've been on the David L. Fields as the high captain. Been the crews, the guys have done immaculate work on the inside. You've seen where is Webbie, some of the photographs of the wheelhouse and different things where I'll post different stuff. Like we had the Grinch on the boat this past Christmas, walking around, popping up in the videos. So it was something a little different. Even had the Grinch on the logo there for about a week outside hanging out during Christmas time down in the Gulf. But that's about where I'm at right now.
Well, surely 40 years out there, you've got some stories. Tell me about, I guess, the first trip stepping out on deck. What was the most surprising thing you saw, and any specific memories come to mind?
When I first started on deck out in the harbor, I found out real quick that things aren't stable. You got to grow legs for it real quick. Even I mean, yeah, we'd swim and do jet skiing and all that good stuff and try to water ski, but literally walking around, of course, the cables and the timber heads, they all don't give when you smack them with your shins. They hurt really bad. Uh, and Wearing a ball cap here, that's mandatory at night. That was one of the first things I found out real quick when you got hit with the face with the lights at nighttime, that you had to shield your eyes or something like this so you could see where you was walking at. Um, it took it took me a while to get a grasp of it. I wasn't fast about it, but everybody I was around, it was old school. They'd always razz you a little bit, but you'd figure it out. And the guys come down out of the wheelhouse. They'd walk you through it, and you just follow it, and it all worked out. One of the things I've noticed since I deck compared to back then is a lot of the barges all have cavils now instead of timber heads. Um, and that makes I love after I figured out and was shown how to do timber heads, I'd prefer a timber head over a cable all day long. So I actually enjoy the deck. So I can't complain. And I get a bunch of new guys on the boat. I'll actually come down out of the wheelhouse. And like I said, I've always enjoyed the deck. I never planned on going to the wheelhouse. Um, like, I don't know. I enjoyed the deck more than I listened to the radios. I'd say, no, that ain't me. You take care of that. I'll do this down here. Just let me know what you need. I'll take care of it. But again, I got pushed up to the wheelhouse because it was when I was 26. I think it was 26. So um, I had I never had intentions of doing it. I was happy running around on the barges. So plus you stayed in shape better than you do when the process of when you slow yourself down and you still keep eating like you did when you were acting like you're on deck. So you gain a little extra poundage there.
How about your time learning to steer the boat and then getting your first pilot position?
Oh, that was rough. That's mentally, that's probably one of the mental things, a challenge that when you're in your 20s that you have you got to have patience. And when you're in your 20s and you're used to being on deck and you're good at decking and you're learning something totally different from where you're standing 2, 4, or 1,000 feet away. You know what you're doing out there, but when you come upstairs to start, you mentally get challenged and you don't have the patience to comprehend sometimes. So the guy that's actually teaching you ends up having to go through a process of helping you understand that you've got to have the patience. When I first started, it was on the Seneca Chief. Um, it was 1,200. No, it was 1,050 horsepower. It's a little ram boat with quart nozzles. That's what I learned on. And that boat's up in Parkersburg, West. No, not Parkersburg. Where's that boat at? It's up in Wheeling, West Virginia. That's where it's at, Wheeling. Um, and anyway, Elbert Bishop, who was teaching me, we had just put a barge downstream, the barge in the head of an Ohio River Company barge in his tow in the middle, and I was getting impatient. And he turned around and he said, I said, here, hold this over. I'm gonna go out there and catch these wires. And these guys are slow as all get out. Let me go down here and help them. And he said, whoa, 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 hang on. He said, you better, Hoss, you got to make up your mind. He said, if you walk out that door right here, we're done. I'm not going to teach you anymore. You're going to have to learn how to sit in that chair and wait for them. You can't be out there and up here at the same time. So if you walk out that door, I'm telling you now, we're through. You can go out the deck, but I'm not teaching no more. And as you can see, I'm still here, and I started learning my patience from that day forward, how to sit there and twiddle my thumbs and not try to jump back and forth so quick when things aren't going so smooth out on the deck. You got to learn how to make things happen. From up there, going, okay, is everything okay? You doing all right? Just sit there and twiddle your thumbs or make sure nothing's happening bad. So just as an overseer, as a supervisor. So yeah, it's been a learning curve throughout the years for me, um, gaining patience. And that's what I tell the guys now that I train is slow down a little bit, hang on, don't jump it before it's time. Just it'll come through. You just got to wait for everything to evolve. And once you get making it evolved, um, it becomes easier because things start to shine light on stuff, so to speak. Um, I've got a steersman right now who's been steering, but he had his patience. He wasn't wanting. He was wanting to push, and I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Slow down a little bit. Watch it. You got to wait for it to happen before you do something to make up your mind. You have more time to make up your mind to make a good judgment call. So I'm passing on the patience that it took me to learn. I'm doing the same thing to all the guys that run with me. So it's been interesting so far. I mean, I still learn some new tricks every once in a while, but it's kind of tough after 40 years to learn something new. But I try to.
This is a bit of a loaded question. You listed almost every, or more waterways than I really could have rattled off. But do you have any good stories, highlights, or lowlights of your experiences on each of those waterways?
Um, well, summertime's always good on the upper. You always get a lot of pleasure craft, good and bad. There's always some good stories up there to tell. Um, I got the Ohio River. I Between the Ohio River, Tennessee, and the upper are probably the most scenic things to watch, look at, just the backgrounds, the trees, the different, especially during the fall areas. Um, the most nerve-wracking thing that I've had on the Ohio River when I was working with AEP is when I had a pleasure craft right above 6 Mile, my bad, 12 Mile Island, and I was on the motor vessel Mary Shield, and I had a pleasure boat come out. I was doing 12 mile an hour southbound because AEP we was full ahead both directions, and that pleasure boat popped out, and I slammed the brakes on. I ended up smoking the starboard clutch. The engineer rang up at me, and I said, "Ah, yeah, I know, I know, I know. I smoked the clutch. It was smoke the clutch or run a pleasure boat over, and I wasn't about to hit a pleasure boat." Um, I've had up in that was there. Then I had another thing up on the Monongahela River coming out of there, mile 81, big whitely turn. You could do 6 stumbos or 3 jumbos. I come out of there. I was calling on the old ugly boat, what they called it. That boat's down at Mount Vernon, Indiana, right now on contracted Arco's fleet. I come down through that up there at Big Whiteley, and it was about watch change, and it was the only boat that I ever made me sit down and steer. I could stand up most of the time on any other boat, but that's the only boat I've ever had it forced me to sit down and steer. I went around what Big Whiteley and buzzed around there, and there was a big old rock boulder that the Coast Guard had spray painted so you could see it. So I guess it had been hit so many times. And I went around it, lined up for the bridge, got through it and all that. The captain says, "You know, this boat will never steer that bend, right?" He said, "That you got lucky." I went, "Oh, now you tell me." So thanks on that one. Then the Allegheny, I went all the way up to Lock 8. No, take it back. It was Lock 7. They're now working up Lock 8 now. They just put the electronic charts there. Um, I drove up the light boat because I was waiting on a barge. Went up there, and we come back down. They were actually loading a barge full of old rubber tires, which I found that's the only time I've ever seen a barge full of rubber tires, at least on the inland waterway system. Then let's see, the most memorable thing on the Mon since I went up there. It was cool to see it during the high water in 2019. Then when I came back in 2020, where the water had fell back out, the cool bridge there at Omaha, um, the walkway bridge, it's like a figure eight, or not it's like an S, and it's got beautiful lights on it, LED lighting. That's interesting. There's and then the railroad bridges on that river are different. There's no fenders to save you there. Most of your swing railroad bridges have no fenders to keep you out of trouble. So if you miss, you hit the turntable or knock your boat out, you're in trouble because it takes it out. Um, See the lower. Um, it amazes me still to this day how many barges this industry moves on the lower. Um, Anywhere from 1 barge to 46 barges Arco does from time to time. It's like I said, still it kind of mind boggling when you think about the amount of tonnage that moves on the lower. Um, what else? See the Arkansas River. That one's a little skinny river, ain't bad. That kind of reminds me of the one bridge that sticks out in my mind is where I had to click 5 times on the mic to get a dispatcher on the railroad to raise a railroad bridge for me, and I had to call him 15 minutes early. That there stuck out like a sore thumb to me. The Wachita, now that was interesting there because we went up, and I can remember to this day, I was going up to the dock there at mile 151. I can't remember the lock, but there was a bend. We literally turned around. I went around this bend with this tow. It was a unit tow, and we went around the bend, and there was a cow in the field, and I literally drove around this cow, and I watched his right side, and I went all the way around this bend, and I could see his left side, and the cow literally was just sitting there eating and looking, watching us go all the way around the bend. And at the top side of the bend, I was thinking to myself, this is going to be a nasty bend if high water was to hit. This is going to get ugly. You probably have to flank it. And after I got about a quarter mile higher, there was a church in this bend on the top side of that. And I was like, I know why they put that church there, so you could start praying when you come southbound to see if you'd make that bend or not. I was laughing on that one. Me and Kenny Murphy were together on that run a couple of times. We talked to one another about that one for a while. Let's see, that's on that. The Chaffalai River. That was interesting on the small boat ducking under the bridges there. Good water, no traffic. It was quite underused, in my opinion, on the amount of traffic that's not used for that river for all the good water it's got. Because it runs down into the Morgan City, all the way down in there. It runs from Western Rivers into where you got to have an license down there at Morgan City. Then let's see, we covered the Mon already. I've been to the head of navigation of the Mon. That looked really weird on the Mon, which I just seen that they're going to blow out Lock 3. They're going to take it out where it used to be called Lock 2. I forget what it's called now. Braddock Tam now, I believe. They're going to take it out. See what else? See Allegheny, Mon, Tennessee River. Tennessee River is the first time I made locks. Pickwick and Wilson Lock probably stand out the most and out of everybody. Wilson being the almost 100-foot, I think it's 96 feet on the lift. That one, you got to wear a jacket when you go inside of it when they're lowering, because if not, you're going to get cold because that water is cold. Pickwick's the one that really rocks you when the water is running. Once they get over 80,000 on that one bounces you real good. But for all the locks, why would they build 1,000-foot chamber when you got 1,000 foot of tow, and they forgot the boat? So it's like, hey, y'all got 200 more feet would have been nice, that, could have straight single and shot on through, but that created a bunch of extra work. Tom Bigby, the most memorable thing on it was cutting through the cut when you come out going down before you go into Yellow Creek there, going all through that rock and everything coming up out of the Tom Bigby. That was the most interesting thing. It was like there's nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. Hope you got satellite radio because you're going to get quite bored. Then the Black Warrior River, I ran that a couple of times going up to Tuscaloosa. Got a few locks on that one. That was the one lock. I forget what it was called now. I just did some information on it too. One of the taller lifts on the Black Warrior, you go up, they raise you up, they open the gates, and you actually get cut through a side of a mountain, which was really cool because I'd never seen anything like that. Like I said, the Corps actually cut this out and put this lock. That was interesting to start with. on the Black Warrior. I thought that was cool. That's got the yo-yo bridge there at Demopolis, which they were fixing the set, I believe, for that lock to open again there at Demopolis here in the next, I think that was supposed to happen today, this morning or afternoon. And the lower end of there was Jackson, that railroad bridge there. It's in a bend. They redated it. That was always interesting. Um, I learned when I was there at Warrior and Golf why they did things a little different on the wiring, but they built the toes to keep from um, if they stripped the string off, they'd only break a wire, two wires, one on the head, one on the stern. Everything else would fall off, which was really cool. Um, so they could just back up, get it on the sandbar, pop it back off, and wire it back up really quick. I thought that was really cool. Um, let's see, covered Tennessee to Ohio, the Illinois River. Oh, the Ill River, they call it. I found out real quick the 5 mile an hour speed roll and 3.5 mile an hour on the turns has definitely been the standard for many, many years and probably will be if they until they decide to make that river about another 100 feet wider. Um, it's the bridges are interesting. Florence is probably I've never personally had any problems with it. Um, mm, the upper Joliet bridges, those when I worked at AEP, we were putting 15 loads through there. There were 5 of us in that trade at the time. Um, that was one of the most interesting things to do. Learning that was my first time ever when I worked at AEP going up that high and seeing the bridges open up like Chicago and you see in the movies and all that, which was really cool. It's no fun when you're in the boat though, because you're hoping that you don't smack something. You gotta be super slow and you can't just buzz on down through there in a hurry. You had to be very patient with that. Um, and then the rock wall going all the way up to 9th Street or the concrete wall. You had to tie off and split your strings, which I was just up there a couple months ago. Again, not as big as toe, but it hasn't changed. Um, the upper's probably mm, the upper's probably one of the most mentally challenged rivers that you could possibly run for anybody. And if you could act other than the Missouri River, the most mentally challenging rivers to run because of all the locks and bridges. And you're constantly northbound's not bad, but you've got to be on your game southbound. I started up there before the assist boats came in, so all the deck crew was seasoned and knew how to work lines and all that. It's becoming a lost art where they're starting to put assist boats just about all the locks now. So I still teach the guys how to work the line so they can actually become better wheelmen and better focused on what they can do. So it helps the guys um, control the tow better um, to help keep an accident from happening or somebody even getting hurt. Um, but yeah, mentally challenging up there. It's gotten better. Burlington, that bridge got changed out 10, 12 years ago. That's now a lift span. Um, let's see. Let's see. Missouri, most memorable on that, like I said, was the bridge. Um, that was impressive. I kind of was pretty cool to see. I'd never seen an S-turn bridge. Um, they built a bridge just for people to walk across the river. Typically, they always build a highway. I was like, okay, they must really like their walking to stay physically fit or in some type of that. Um, I think I've covered about all. Oh, I've done the lower end of the Cumberland River too, which is basically all industry. That one's a super challenge with the 15 barge tow. And they just changed that lower bridge out there at Smithland, Kentucky from the old one to the new one, which is really nice. But that's a challenging section of river, the last 32 miles of it from Barkley Lock all the way to the mouth of the Ohio. That's definitely a challenge. That'll keep you on your toes, but you got to flank in high water when they're running a bunch of the hydro plant. It's beautiful country on the Tennessee River, but it's a toss up between Tennessee, the upper above St. Louis, and the Ohio. I'm not saying anything bad just because the Ohio's my backyard, but probably the best city front that I've ever seen is a toss up between Cincinnati and downtown Pittsburgh on the rivers. That's the most interesting by boat. Would be Cincinnati, downtown Cincinnati, and downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There were the Mon and the Allegheny join right there at Point State Park there to form the Ohio. That's always been one of the cool spots because they've got a submarine. They brought a submarine up when I was decking that ended up in Pittsburgh right there on the Allegheny side. It's still there as you can go visit or whatever and go down inside of it. Pretty cool to see. I don't know. I've had an interesting career. I get a lot of guys that still call me and they'll say, "Hey Dave, you know this," or "What would you do in this situation?" And I'd rattle something off and they'd say, "You know exactly about what you're talking about." I said, "Yeah, well, I just got lucky. I can remember all this stuff on the mile markers. The or hey, what would you do at this particular lock?" And I could actually rattle it off. Of course, anymore, everybody's got the internet. You can pull up river stages, gauges, how much dam's running, all kinds of different stuff. Hell, the Ohio River's got, which I found years ago, they've got that's a flow / mile per hour gauge. You can go to it and it tells you exactly at each one of the locks on the Ohio how fast the flow's going, miles per hour. So that's half the battle when you're going into a lock if you know how fast the current's moving. Yeah, I pass that information along nowadays. I still like trying to spook a few new guys here and there when I ask them about it. As far as east to west, my first time going east to west was really cool. I was going east out of Mobile, or my bad, New Orleans down there at Industrial Lock. We were heading to Mobile and totally different. And they had always talked about Petty Boy, which I was like, what in the world is Petty Boy? I'm like, whatever, you know. So I ended up, the old man that showed me first time I'd ever got to use a compass. We actually had a compass on board. And he said, now once you go out here, you get out here to the Wrigley's, you'll turn out into the Wrigley's right there at the Pearl River. And we're going to set your radar up on 6 miles. I was like, 6 miles. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Okay. I went over and started pressing the buttons up to 6 miles. And he said, now I need you to pay attention. I need you to get these binoculars and look out that dayboard. All right. He said, now look at your radar. I need you to follow between these little dots. Go on out. I was like, okay. So that was my first time actually having to do a compass. And it was 88 degrees is what I had to go by on the compass. We done 88 degrees. It would actually run you basically through a lot of the areas. And crossing the ship channels was interesting. There at Pascagoula. See, what was it? We had one at Pascagoula, and there was another one too. I forget which one that one was. But all of a sudden you'd be just cruising along, and all of a sudden you hit the ship channel and you'd start to rock back and forth, which wasn't too bad. And then the next thing you know, we got there to right outside Dolphin Island, where Dauphin Island, Alabama, is just to the west of that is Petty Boy. Well, Petty Boy, you don't go when a south wind comes. If you get any type of south wind, you get the bigger rollers. Well, you'll break your toe up. So we went through there. It was a little bouncy. It wasn't bad. I was like, oh, this is Petty Boy. And then I learned that's how I learned to do my range lights too. Because again, I had been up here in the northern part of the waterway system, and I started running down there. That's when I started figuring out the range lights and this. And first time I ever seen it was Mobile getting on the Pascagoula. And I was like, what in the world am I looking at? What did I get myself into? He said, oh, you ain't seen none of this? I said, man, we don't have this stuff up north. I said, the only thing we've got is those little lights with flashers on them. I said, that there, I have no clue what I'm looking at. I've never seen so many telephone poles in my life. And he chuckled and all that. So I started running that. I found that a challenge. It was actually wasn't bad. I enjoyed that down there, getting the suntan in March before anybody else up here was still digging out from snow. So that was pretty cool. It was rough, packing for 2 seasons, t-shirts down there and having to come back up to a winter coat up here, back up in the Cincinnati area. I've seen some bad stuff happen over the years. I've seen some good stuff, but I've seen a lot of changes. Like a lot of the older guys, we've all seen our fair share of things. I could be worse. I mean, could be better, but overall, the industry's gotten a lot better. Like I said, it could always be worse. I can't complain. I mean, where I stand at today, I've had a pretty good career. I can't complain. You know, we can always have our wants and needs. I mean, but like I said, I can't complain where I stand at today. Everything that I've learned, I never dreamed about running the lower with 25 barges or 30 barges, going through Memphis doing 10 mile an hour, just cruising down there, and then standing out on the second deck and looking out while somebody else is doing it, going, this is really, really cool. This is a cool job that I've actually walked into after all these years. It's still interesting. I still find the peace and quiet if I walk out on the tow where you can just hear the water, it's nice. Fair weather deckhand is the good part about my job position now is I don't have to deal with the weather as much unless I absolutely have to. I go out and something's real bad. But I can't complain. Like I said, I enjoy razzing the guys from time to time. So I tell them all the time, you'll get better at it. Just you got to be patient with it.
From 1984 to today, how have you seen the industry change, positively and negatively?
Positive, the condition of the boats. That's the number one thing. Technology's come a long way. Whereas when I first started, we basically had nothing. We had a swing meter, an electric bulb, and a radar, a tube type radar. After the Mobile incident there, I was just talking about that too down there in Alabama. 14 right there on the backside where he took the wrong side and hit the Amtrak there, Sunshine Limited. They had a big deal in DC where we got the electronic charts to today. That's been a work in progress that got started from that accident, which is industry wide now. That's some of the really good perks. Last 16 years, I've been involved with that. I got involved with that starting in 2008 with the Corps and helping make hundreds and hundreds of corrections as an end user, as a wheelman. Somebody can actually knows that when they can look at a chart, they know me personally as a wheelman. I've actually scrutinized a lot of their stuff, and I don't really cut them any slack. If I can find an error in the charts, I actually tell them about it. Of course, now they can actually do it by their phone. They've got an app by their phone about the chart error corrections and all that as well. Like I said, there's technology is probably the biggest improvement. We have a floating office now. We have more information now than we can actually absorb sometimes when it comes to a tornado warnings or flash floods or ice coming weather. I mean, other than the like I said, technology, communication, cell phones, where you used to have water comm, you don't have that anymore. The cell phones, data, there's on an average boat, there's 3 computers now with access back and forth between. You actually have all kinds of information at your fingertips. The downside of it is pros and cons. The cons, I would say, probably industry trying to push these guys overall too fast to get through the system, where we're losing the trade. The younger generation wants it now, and you just can't do this job now. It takes time so you can understand it in order to get good at it. I've seen it, and all the older guys know that. That's where some of your accidents come in, somebody get hurt, and that's including the wheelhouse. Even the most seasoned guy can have a hiccup, like I said, and then the deck crews getting pushed, or you have a 2-year guy training a brand new guy, and they run into a situation where the wheelhouse has to happen. That's the biggest downfall. Is, like I said, your next generation of wheelmen coming up, or potential wheelmen or engineers. I'm one of the last of the old school, so I can honestly say by the time in another 10, 15 years, just about everything's going to go from mechanical to electronic. The entire industry is going that way because it makes sense, and I don't blame them. But then you've got to have a guy that knows how to run a computer to be able to diagnose it, and a lot of your engineers are old school dinosaurs, so to speak, and they don't know anything. So you've got to call a third party out to help them, and they go, well, if I'd known it was just an oil sensor bad, I could have changed that out. Well, the computer didn't tell you that. So yeah, there's been a lot of good, a lot of, the bridges have gotten better. There's been a lot of work at the locks. They've improved the locks a lot. They're supposed to start construction on the new 1,200-foot chamber there at Lock 25. Like I said, it's overall industry's gotten a lot better. Like I said, the equipment overall has gotten a whole lot better. More people are taking time to actually do the right thing. So yeah, the pros outweigh the cons. It's just, again, today's deck crew just they don't understand that they just can't do it right now. It takes months and sometimes years just to get really good at something. So, and then they get aggravated and they just walk and leave. And I'm like, and I had literally a guy just last week. He was really good, and I'd met him 3 times on different boats, and he ended up saying that he's done, he's leaving, he's going to go trying to find him a land job because he wants to be with his family. And that's one of the downfalls of working out here when you're line hauling. You've got to sacrifice something for that little extra bit of money, but everybody's got their own preference. So And I don't blame him. I don't blame anybody that does that because it's so hard. It's not easy being out here. Sometimes you miss a lot of stuff, and then all the guys um, will agree to that. If you ask anybody out here, there's times you want to see a birthday that or a Christmas on time, but it or a graduation, you try to get off for a graduation for your kids or um, yeah, it gets interesting from time to time during special occasions, especially if you're married. So, oh, especially anniversaries. That's another one too. That's in a dogfight by itself there.
Well, Captain Webbie, I think that'll do it, but I do appreciate your time this afternoon.
Oh, all good.
We'll keep in touch, and I'll be watching Facebook for some more surprise appearances of old Webbie.
Yep, I just posted one last night. I don't know if I should say where it was at or not. Nobody had only Chuck Hoyce is the only one that says I know, I know, I know. So it was nighttime coming out of a particular river. So and I had the steersman in front of me. So yeah, I'll be I post from time to time. Like I said, it quite interesting. I try to catch people off guard to see what kind of responses I get.
Enjoy,
Oh yeah.
sir. Thanks again.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, and you lost a beard.
Yeah. I got rid of the it was a big joke 16 years ago when I first met the lady that's in charge of the electronic charts. I had worked nighttime all night. We'd have been just talking on the phone. And I said, I'll come down and meet you after lunch. And I said, now I'm going to warn you, I'm going to look pretty rough. I said, because working all night and I got to drive an hour and a half to Louisville. She said, that's fine. We made I think it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were supposed to meet up. So I got down there, found a parking spot, walked and went through security. I was in camouflage pants, army pants. I had a oh yeah, Kool-Aid t-shirt on, and I had a Kentucky ball cap. And well, I went through the security and all that. No big deal, no problem. I had my thumb drives with me. We were gonna go up there, and I think it's the seventh floor is where I got to go. So I go in the middle of the building there. I go up the seventh floor, and I turn to the right. I go to the hallway, and I look to the left. And of course, it's a big old building. There ain't nobody to be seen. I turn around, I look to the right. I'm like, well, potluck it is. I'll go to the left, see if maybe somebody's at a desk somewhere, so maybe I can find her. So I get all the way down towards the end, the last second to the last door. There's this lady working on a computer. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am." I said, "I'm looking for a Denise." Said, "Yeah, she's." And what are you here for? And I was like, "Well, I was supposed to meet her at 1 o'clock," and I said, I said, "I know it's 1 o'clock, a little after one." I was like, "I come up here and we're supposed to meet each other after lunch." I got with her in the electronic charting. She says, "Well, she's up there by the elevator." So I was like, "You mean the elevator's back where I came from?" She says, "Yeah, go back up there." It's like, I'll call her." I said, "All right." So when I popped out of her little office, there was this lady standing. I walked up to her and I said, "Are you Denise?" She said, "Yeah." She says, "Are you David?" And I went, "Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you. How you doing?" So we went back into her little cubby office, and she ended up giving me a metal box to sit on, whatever type of equipment it was. She didn't have a chair. I said, "That's all right. I'll sit anywhere." And I handed her a stick, and we're about 20 minutes into this. And I said, "Denise," I said, "I only got an hour on my parking meter. I don't want to get a ticket, parking ticket." She said, "All right." Well, about 20 minutes goes into this, and next thing I know, um, gentleman she works with says, comes to her office, says, "Hey, Denise, I hate to bother you. Can I talk to you for a minute?" And she looked up at him and says, I'm working with somebody here right now. Do you really got to do it now?" He said, "Yeah, I really need to talk to you now." I was like, and she looked at me. She says, "You mind if I take care of that?" I said, "No, go ahead and do your thing." I said, "It's all good." So I'm sitting there, and stands up, goes around the corner. I seen this guy's face. just barely outside the door. It pops in, pops out. Like there's two of them. While they're whispering, I can't hear anything. She comes back in, she sits down, and I said, I hope everything's all right. She said, yeah, it's all good. We'll get back to doing this. And we done our thing. And she thanked me for everything that I was doing. And it's been about 3 years later, we were in Nashville, Tennessee at the meeting during the yearly electronic chart meeting. And we were at a bar, and she says, David, I got to tell you something. I was like, okay, what? She says, do you remember that first time we ever met in that, the person that asked me to step out? I went, yeah. Said, they thought you were a drunken homeless man looking for me. I was like, you what? Said, yeah, they had security ready to arrest you. That was the other guy popped around the corner. They had handcuffs ready and everything. I was like, oh, really? I said, I'm glad you decided to tell them I wasn't a homeless guy drunk. We were actually doing work. So that was a big joke. So last year I let my beard grow out real big. I didn't get a haircut for 10 months. I just trimmed my mustache just enough where wouldn't get a bunch of food in it. And I just kept letting everything get real big and bushy. And I said, I'm gonna go in as a homeless guy. So I let my hair grow, everything looking pretty shaggy. And I went out and bought camouflage pants. And of course, I still got my, oh yeah, Kool-Aid t-shirt. So I thought I'd pull a little shenanigan with them. They all got a kick out of that this year. So after the meeting, I came back home. I went ahead and cleaned everything back up, got rid of the beard, shaved it up, started to get a little rough already again, stubbles, and got the more professional haircut again to go back down to business, so to speak.
Roger on that, Cap. Again, I thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
All right, you take care of yourself. Thanks for saying hi to me.
Yes, sir. You too. Thanks a lot. This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.